Hello, hello.
Hi.
How you doing? Hey, Valerie. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I haven't spoken to you for a while. How have you been? What have you been up to?
I gave Tai Chi a go this morning. So
Yeah.
that is. Yeah.
How'd that go?
Just thought, different way of moving the body.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing it with my parents online.
Oh, yeah.
To try and help them get some new movement going as well.
That's sweet. Yeah. How did they do with it?
Yeah, it was okay. I found a good video that was really helpful with the instructions. So they enjoyed it. So hopefully we'll keep it going.
Oh, fab. Cool.
Yep.
Is that like a YouTube thing, or was it like a?
Yeah, there's like an academy on YouTube that I've released several different lessons, and they're all very short. And they really break down the technique and the sort of symbolism behind the movements and things. So that was really
Okay. That's quite good. Knowing what it all means and why you do it and stuff. That's good.
Yeah. So it's nice. So we'll see, because I've completed my 30-day yoga challenge. Hi, Frankie. Now as well. So I'm going to try and keep going with it. And see how we do.
Do you feel like more flexible after 30 days? Or?
I do a bit. I kind of feel like I've grown slightly taller.
Yeah.
I could touch a part of my ceiling that I've not been able to touch before. Like I've grown.
I'm exactly there also.
Yeah, awesome. And I feel a bit stronger. Like I'm noticing small changes in like the tone of my body.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling a bit stronger. So
that's good.
I'm going to try and keep going with the yoga for as long as possible, basically.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Thanks. How about you? How's your day been?
It's been okay, thanks. Yeah, quite busy, but yeah, okay. Nice and relaxed now. Yeah.
Good. How are you feeling today, Frankie? You're not hungover or anything?
No. Yeah, like just still really happy. Just still full of happiness from yesterday. Quite tired. Like I think it was there was it was quite sort of emotionally draining. So I've just kind of really taken it easy today, and not done much at all, which has been nice. Had a little bit of a nap.
Good.
Have you rehydrated since yesterday?
Oh, almost certainly not. Although I can tell that I am still super dehydrated, so I'm on the water tonight. Take me a little while to build up my reservoirs after all that fucking crying. Yeah, really good. Feeling good.
Cool.
Nice to see you all.
Me too. Yeah. I'm caught up on the story now as well because I missed a couple of nights, so looking forward to see what happens next.
Well, I think it's going to be Wednesday for the grand finale now. Okay. So tonight we'll do chapter 8 tonight, which is quite a beefy one, and then chapter 9 is only fairly little, and chapter 10 is enormous. So we're going to do chapter 9 and like a little bit of the beginning of chapter 10 tomorrow, and then have the kind of the finale on Wednesday. So
sounds good.
Exciting about that.
Yeah.
I can't believe
something about.
Hi.
I read something about a sparkly dress code for Wednesday. Is it?
Well, I think there was talk of Wednesday being on Wednesdays we wear sparkles anyway.
Oh, I see.
So that kind of that all ties in very nicely.
Yeah. So
we'll be like once everyone's here, then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, sparkly star themed dressing up is optional but very much encouraged for Wednesday.
Okay, it'll be fun. I love sparkles. So.
I love the end of book excitement. Is always good.
Definitely. Who have we got? So we'll swipe through. Hey everybody. Hey Anders.
Hey Frankie.
Anders, you look so sleepy.
Yeah, I'm just
You're not feeling great, honey?
Feeling a bit ground down.
Oh, sweetheart.
It's what happens when you just work full time for like 6 weeks while not being allowed to do anything else in your life.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that, Dan.
It's all good, you know. It's like not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not the best.
Chris, mute yourself.
Tris.
Chris.
Okay.
There we go.
Has Tris said, did he find a new flatmate? I'm super curious.
Oh, I don't know.
Not sure.
Apparently they got 20 inquiries in the first day.
Bloody
Oh,
hell.
wow.
What?
Yeah.
Who's
they do
in
have.
the house right now?
People who are fed up with their current flatmate.
Just thought Bristol is just such a fucked up market.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also imagine there's not a lot of places going right now. Right?
Mm.
Yeah.
I have a cat complaining in the background. I think she wants out.
And even fewer with a hot tub.
This would be to indicate how much you want.
So if everything goes to plan, it means I'll miss the finale because Alan will get home. So hopefully I miss the finale.
Yes, that's a very good
Yeah,
reason.
like,
Amazing.
Please miss the finale.
Yeah. We'll all massively cross our fingers that you just don't turn up on Wednesday.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about it? You've got to be excited.
Yeah, it's like it feels like it's been so long that I like hardly dare to be excited about it in case it goes wrong.
Yeah.
We'll see. I guess the only thing is if the person who's meant to replace him tests positive for COVID, then I'm not 100% sure what happens. So neither are the company, it turns out.
Oh God.
But his replacement comes from Greenock and is not having to fly in through airports and things, so that it's less likely.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Alan should be getting off the ship on Wednesday.
It's very exciting.
And I think currently the only thing that will throw a spanner in that works is if his replacement tests positive for COVID. Because they're testing them all before they put them in close quarters on a boat.
Makes sense, yeah.
It does. So hopefully he will be back and I will miss the finale.
How long has it been already? Has it been
As reasons to miss the
8
finale, I think.
8 weeks today?
like 2 months?
Long.
That's a long time.
How often do you two get to talk?
They have internet, but we only have video when they're in port. So we probably get video calls like a couple of times a week, although it's been a bit more regular recently because they haven't had as much work to do because oil is doing terribly right now. So they've been like an anchor within phone distance for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But we do get to talk. Yeah.
I saw the US oil futures for May April or May went into the negative, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means.
It was more expensive to store than you could expect to make money from. So, and shutting down production is expensive as well, and then restarting it. So they would pay you to take oil away.
Sorry, just a quick question. Nick, did you used to have a beard?
Yes. I shaved it this morning.
I'm thinking you were looking really fresh-faced and youthful.
I thought it was Nick's younger brother.
I mean, there's good Nick and evil Nick. I killed evil Nick this morning.
Absorbed him.
It's cool. You look good, man.
You mean he didn't look good before?
Nope.
Not to make any compliments with that kind of logic, Casey.
All I need now is a haircut. Yeah.
Or just growing your hair long.
Ugh, it just goes everywhere. It's terrible.
Shave it off. Shave it off.
Out on the street with a banner, like, I need a haircut now, lift the lockdown.
I mean, I cut Nick's hair anyway, so.
Yeah. Katie's my hairdresser.
Have you been furloughed, Katie, in your hairdressing duties?
No, Nick just doesn't care what he looks like. His haircuts are driven entirely by me saying, "You need a haircut, Nick." When I first met him, he had his hair in a ponytail. He only got it cut because he went to see his ex in New York.
Wow.
Oh.
I see nothing wrong with this.
I've not cut my hair for years either, Nick, don't worry.
And you look just as gorgeous as Nick does. Possibly more so. Definitely more impressive hair.
It is good hair.
I have a question for you. Like, how amazing is Bina?
100%.
So cute.
Oh.
I'm glad the poster's still working. I feel like that's only been about a week and a half, which isn't bad at all.
Bina, you are amazing though. Right, it's nearly 10 past. Should we start thinking about story time?
Yes.
Okay, so just quickly before we get started, because I don't know, I think probably people have joined since I kind of said this, but so we're going to have chapter 8 tonight. Chapter 9 is quite small and chapter 10 is massive. So tomorrow night we'll do chapter 9 and like the first little chunk of chapter 10, and then do the big finale with the rest of chapter 10 and the kind of little epilogue on Wednesday night, if that suits people. I believe we had already decided that Wednesday night was going to be sparkle themed dressing night, so that fits the theme pretty nicely. So if people would like to wear their sparkliest, most stardusty outfits then on Wednesday for the kind of final party, then they are very welcome. It is not compulsory at all, but I will definitely be wearing a gross silver dress and some glitter. So excited about that. And then what I think I'll do in that case is, so we'll have Thursday night off as like a post book recovery, and then on Friday, and let me know like what you think about this. There have been a couple of people who have expressed interest in a sexy story time edition.
Oh God. That's how I feel about these.
Okay, so that was an encouraging noise from someone. Can't quite work out who it was. So potentially looking at doing that as like a one-off edition on Friday, before we kind of resume normal programming. I'll post a bit more information about that on the group, but if anyone is interested in either coming along for that or reading something for that, then like get in touch and let me know, because I'll not do it if it's something that everyone goes, oh, you know what, that doesn't, I'll not be there for that. But if there are enough people who kind of go, oh yeah, that sounds like a fun, sexy thing to do, then we will have a smutty version of Storytime on Friday. And then poetry Saturday and Standalone Sunday, as usual.
Frankie, if other people are reading things aside from you, can we have some sort of smuttiness level cutoff? So, like, somewhere between erotic and explicit.
Because this is very much just I don't know who would be interested, how many people would be interested, if anyone would be interested, and what they would be interested in reading. So I don't know if anyone would be interested in reading, or if they would be, then what they would want to read. So if anyone is interested, please get in touch and tell me what it is that you would be looking at reading, and I will try and work out based on that kind of how this might work. Like, it may not work, it may just be like, oh no, you know what, this is not something that is going to be a thing. So yeah, like I'll work out what exactly the tone is going to be and what the level is going to be, and and kind of make it as explicit as possible in advance about what it's
what to expect.
Yeah, no one's going to turn up and be like, oh my god, no, this is not what I was signing up for. So
that sounds like a lot of work for you.
I mean, yeah, I'll fit it in somewhere in my hectic schedule of all of the other things I have to do. This is kind of my job now. This is the job that I have given myself in the absence of the job. So I'm chill with that. I'm chill with that.
Cool.
But anyway, this is the prospective possibility of a thing that might happen.
Nice.
And,
even if it's just me, Frankie, please turn up and read me sexy stories.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. That's positive affirmation. I'm sitting here. I was like, oh god, have I really just fucking embarrassed myself?
I'll be there. I'll be there.
No.
I have a breed sexy to me.
Thank you. That makes me
might suffer, but I'm gonna be there anyway.
We could, if someone wants a limit to how sexy it gets, we can always have a watershed.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of one of the reasons that I wanted to find out if people were interested in reading. Like, if no one's interested in reading, then I will just read a couple of slightly smutty things, and that will be, everyone will go hee hee hee, and that will be fine. But if
so grown up.
If there are, I know you guys. Okay, we have met.
They're already going hee hee.
So, but if other people are interested in reading, and they will need to let me. They can't just go like, oh yeah, I have a thing to read, but it's going to be like a fun surprise. Like, no, I need to know what it's going to be. And so I would probably try and work out a running order, roughly from least smutty to most smutty, or most kind of least explicit to most explicit. So if at any point anyone is kind of coming along and they go, you know what, okay, I think that's probably, I've reached about my limit of what I am chill with, they could just tap out at that point. So it'll only be the hardcore dirty perverts who are left at the end, and I'll be able to see who you all are, and then I'll know.
We could not put that one on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's not YouTube. That'll be for my personal files.
A little secret.
I have a book that has lots of cute, strange, slightly odd, dirty stories that I think would be kind of the right level, so I can share.
That sounds great. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and if anyone has anything that they would like to share, it can be poetry as well as prose. I'll probably put an upper limit on length, as it were, just so that
already.
What about girth?
I believe you got a book of smutty poetry for your birthday, Frankie.
Did I get a book of smutty? Oh my god. Okay. more possibilities just open themselves up to me. But yeah. So if anyone has something that they would like read again, but they don't want to like read it themselves, then like just give me a shout and I will.
How do people feel about like humorous smutty readings along the lines of like badly written fan fiction?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. I might do a selection of readings from My Immortal then, which is the worst fan fiction.
Yeah.
Yes, I support that completely.
Yes.
Support that completely.
All right, then. That can 100% be a thing. I might have to do some.
Okay, cool. Right, so exciting smutty talk aside, let's have some non-smutty, but like a little bit grim this chapter. So just to warn you of a sudden sort of slightly jarring tonal shift.
Worse than the unicorn.
Just a bit grisly. I wish I could be more explicit than that, but I'm not going to be. So, people ready for story time? Okay, hold on, let me get you all set up. Right. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Chapter 8, which treats of castles in the air and other matters. It was dawn in the mountains. The storms of the last few days had passed on and the air was clean and cold. Lord Septimus of Stormhold, tall and crow-like, walked up the mountain pass, looking about him as he walked as if he was seeking something he had lost. He was leading a brown mountain pony, shaggy and small. Where the pass grew wider, he stopped, as if he had found what he was looking for beside the trail. It was a small, battered chariot, little more than a goat cart, which had been tipped onto its side. Nearby it lay two bodies. The first was that of a white billy goat, its head stained red with blood. Septimus prodded the dead goat experimentally with its foot, moving its head. It received a deep and fatal wound to its forehead, equidistant between its horns. Next to the goat was the body of a young man, his face as dull in death as it must have been in life. There were no wounds to show how he had died, nothing but a leaden bruise upon his temple. Several yards away from these bodies, half hidden beside a rock, Septimus came upon the corpse of a man in his middle years, face down, dressed in dark clothes. The man's flesh was pale, and his blood had pooled upon the rocky floor below him. Septimus crouched beside the body and, gingerly, lifted its head by the hair. Its throat had been cut, expertly, slit from one ear to the other. Septimus stared at the corpse in puzzlement. He knew it, yet... And then, in a dry, hacking cough of a noise, he began to laugh. "Your beard," he told the corpse aloud. "You shaved your beard? As if I would not have known you with your beard gone, Primus." Primus, who stood grey and ghostly beside his other brothers, said, "You would have known me, Septimus. But it might have bought me a few moments wherein I might have seen you before you knew me." And his dead voice was nothing but the morning breeze rattling the thorn bush. Septimus stood up. The sun began to rise then over the easternmost peak of Mount Belly, framing him in light. "So I am to be the 82nd Lord of the Stormhold," he said to the corpse on the ground and to himself. "Not to mention the Master of the High Crags, Seneschal of the Spire Towns, Keeper of the Citadel, Lord High Guardian of Mount Huon, and all the rest of it." "Not without the power of Stormhold about your neck, you're not, my brother," said Quintus tartly. And then there's the matter of revenge, said Secundus, in the voice of the wind howling through the pass. You must take revenge upon your brother's killer before anything else now. It's blood law. As if he had heard them, Septimus shook his head. Why could you have not waited just a few more days, Brother Primus? He asked the corpse at his feet. I would have killed you myself. I had a fine plan for your death. When I discovered you were no longer on the heart of a dream, it took me little enough time to steal a ship's boat and get on your trail. And now I must revenge your sad carcass, and all for the honour of our blood and the Stormhold. So, Septimus will be the 82nd Lord of Stormhold, said Tertius. There is a proverbial saying chiefly concerned with warning against too closely calculating the numerical value of unhatched chicks, pointed out Quintus. Septimus walked away from the body to piss against a grey boulder. Then he walked back to Primus's corpse. If I had killed you, I could leave you here to rot, he said. But because that pleasure was another's, I shall carry you with me a little way and leave you on a high crag to be eaten by eagles. With that, grunting with the effort, he picked up the sticky-fronted body and hauled it over the back of the pony. He fumbled at the corpse's belt, removing the bag of runestones. Thank you for these, my brother, he said, and he patted the corpse on the back. May you choke on them if you do not take revenge on the bitch who slit my gullet, said Primus, in the voice of the mountain birds waking to greet the new day. They sat side by side on a thick white cumulus cloud the size of a small town. The cloud was soft beneath them and a little cold. It became colder the deeper into it one sank, and Tristram pushed his burned hand as far as he could down into the fabric of it. It resisted him slightly, but accepted his hand. The interior of the cloud felt spongy and chilly, real and insubstantial at once. The cloud cooled a little of the pain in his hand, allowing him to think more clearly. Well, he said after some time, I'm afraid I've made rather a mess of everything. The star sat on the cloud beside him, wearing the robe she had borrowed from the woman in the inn, with her broken legs stretched out on the thick mist in front of her. You saved my life, she said eventually. Didn't you? I suppose I must have done, yes. I hate you, she said. I hated you for everything already, but now I hate you most of all. Tristram flexed his burned hand in the blessed cool of the cloud. He felt tired and slightly faint. Any particular reason? Because, she told him, her voice taut, now that you have saved my life, you are, by the law of my people, responsible for me, and I for you. Where you go, I must also go. Oh, he said. That's not that bad, is it? I would rather spend my days chained to a vile wolf or a stinking pig or a marsh goblin, she told him flatly. I'm honestly not that bad, he told her. Not when you get to know me. Look, I'm sorry about all that chaining you up business. Perhaps we could start all over again, just pretend it never happened. Here now, my name's Tristram Thorn. Pleased to meet you. He held out his unburned hand to her. Mother Moon, defend me, said the star. I would sooner take the hand of an... I'm sure you would, said Tristram, not waiting to find out what he was going to be unflatteringly compared to this time. I've said I'm sorry, he told her. Let's start afresh. I'm Tristram Thorn. Pleased to meet you. She sighed. The air was thin and chill so high above the ground, but the sun was warm, and the cloud shapes about them reminded Tristram of a fantastical city or an unearthly town. Far, far below, he could see the real world, the sunlight pricking out every tiny tree, turning every winding river into a thin silver snail trail, glistening and looping across the landscape of fairy. Well, said Tristram. Aye, said the star, It is a mighty joke, is it not? Whither thou goest, there I must go, even if it kills me. She swirled the surface of the cloud with her hand, rippling mist. Then, momentarily, she touched her hand to Tristram's. My sisters called me Yvain, she told him, for I was an evening star. Look at us, he said, a fine pair. You with your broken leg, me with my hand. Show me your hand. He pulled it from the cool of the cloud. His hand was red and blisters were coming up on each side of it and on the back of it where the flames had licked against his flesh. Does it hurt? She asked. Yes, he said. Quite a lot, really. Good, said Yvain. If my hand had not been burned, you probably would be dead by now, he pointed out. She had the grace to look down, ashamed. You know, he added, changing the subject, I left my bag in that mad woman's inn. We have nothing now save the clothes we stand up in. Sit down in, corrected the star. There's no food, no water. We're half a mile or so above the world with no way of getting down and no control over where the cloud is going. And both of us are injured. Did I leave anything out? You forgot the bit about clouds dissipating and vanishing into nothing, said Yvain. They do that. I've seen them. I could not survive another fall. Tristram shrugged. Well, he said, we're probably doomed then. But we may as well have a look around while we're up here. He helped Yvain to her feet, and awkwardly, the two of them took several faltering steps on the cloud. Then Yvain sat down again. This is no use, she told him. You go and look around. I will wait here for you. Promise? He asked. No running away this time. I swear it. On my mother the moon, I swear it, said Yvain, sadly. You saved my life. And with that, Tristram had to content himself. Her hair was mostly grey now, and her face was pouched and wrinkled at the throat and eyes and at the corners of her mouth. There was no colour to her face, although her skirt was a vivid, bloody splash of scarlet. It had been ripped at the shoulder, and beneath the rip could be seen, puckered and obscene, a deep scar. The wind whipped her hair about her face as she drove the black carriage on through the barrens. The 4 stallions stumbled often. Thick sweat dripped from their flanks, and a bloody foam dripped from their lips. Still, their hooves pounded along the muddy path through the barrens, where nothing grows. The witch queen, oldest of the Lilim, reined in the horses beside a pinnacle of rock the colour of verdigris, which jutted from the marshy soil of the barrens like a needle. Then, as slowly as might be expected from any lady no longer in her first or even her second youth, she climbed down from the driver's seat to the wet earth. She walked around the coach and opened the door. The head of the dead unicorn, her dagger still in its cold eye socket, flopped down as she did so. The witch clambered up into the coach and pulled open the unicorn's mouth. Rigor mortis was starting to set in, and the jaw opened only with difficulty. The witch woman bit down hard on her own tongue, bit down hard enough that the pain was metal sharp in her mouth, bit down until she could taste the blood. She swirled it around in her mouth, mixing the blood with spittle. She could feel that several of her front teeth were beginning to come loose. Then she spat onto the dead unicorn's piebald tongue. Blood flecked her lips and chin. She grunted several syllables that shall not be recorded here, then pushed the unicorn's mouth closed once more. Get out of the coach, she told the dead beast. Stiffly, awkwardly, the unicorn raised its head. Then it moved its legs like a newborn foal or fawn just learning to walk, and twitched and pushed itself up onto all fours, and, half climbing, half falling, it tumbled out of the carriage door and onto the mud, where it raised itself to its feet. Its left side, upon which it had laid in the coach, was swollen and dark with blood and fluids. Half blind, the dead unicorn stumbled towards the green rock needle until it reached a depression at its base, where it dropped to the knees of its forelegs in a ghastly parody of prayer. The witch queen reached down and pulled her knife from out of the beast's eye socket. She sliced across its throat. Blood started to ooze too slowly from the gash she had made. She walked back to the carriage and returned with her cleaver. Then she began to hack at the unicorn's neck until she had separated it from the body, and the severed head tumbled into the rock hollow, now filling with a dark red pool of brackish blood. She took the unicorn's head by the horn and placed it beside the body, on the rock. Thereupon she looked with her hard grey eyes into the red pool she had made. Two faces stared out at her from the puddle. Two women, older by far in appearance than she was now. "Where is she?" asked the first face peevishly. "What have you done with her?" "Look at you," said the second of the Lilim. "You took the last of the youth we had saved. I tore it from the star's breast myself, long, long ago, though she screamed and writhed and carried on ever so. From the looks of you, you've squandered most of youth already." "I came so close," said the witch woman to her sisters in the pool, "but she had a unicorn to protect her. Now, I have the unicorn's head, and I will bring it back with me, for it's long enough since we had fresh ground unicorn's horn in our arts." "Unicorn's horn be damned," said her youngest sister. "What about the star?" "I cannot find her. It is almost as if she were no longer in Fairy." There was a pause. "No," said one of her sisters, "she is still in Fairy. But she is going to the market at Wall, and that is too close to the world on the other side of the wall. Once she goes into that world, she will be lost to us." For they each of them knew that, were the star to cross the wall and enter the world of things as they are, she would become in an instant no more than a pitted lump of metallic rock that had fallen once from the heavens, cold and dead and of no more use to them. "Then I shall go to Deggery's dyke and wake there, for all who go to the wall must pass that way." The reflections of the two old women gazed disapprovingly out of the pool. The witch queen ran her tongue over her teeth. The one at the top will be out by nightfall, she thought, the way it wobbles so. And then she spat into the bloody pool. The ripples spread across it, erasing all traces of the Lilim. Now the pool reflected only the sky over the barrens and the faint white clouds far above them. She kicked the headless corpse of the unicorn so it tumbled over onto its side. Then she took up its head and she carried it with her up to the driver's seat. She placed it beside her, picked up the reins, and whipped the restive horses into a tired trot. Tristram sat at the top of the spire of cloud and wondered why none of the heroes of the penny dreadfuls he used to read so avidly were ever hungry. His stomach rumbled and his hand hurt him so. Adventures are all very well in their place, he thought, but there's a lot to be said for regular meals and freedom from pain. Still, he was alive, and the wind was in his hair, and the cloud was scudding through the sky like a galleon at full sail. Looking out over the world from above, he could never remember feeling so alive as he did at that moment. There was a skyness to the sky and a nowness to the world that he had never seen or felt or realized before. He understood that he was in some way above his problems, just as he was above the world. The pain in his hand was a long way away. He thought about his actions and his adventures and about the journey ahead of him, and it seemed to Tristram that the whole business was suddenly very small and very straightforward. He stood up on the cloud spire and called "Hello" several times, as loudly as he could. He even waved his tunic over his head, feeling a little foolish as he did so. Then he clambered down the spire. 10 feet from the bottom, he missed his footing and fell into the misty softness of the cloud. What were you shouting about? Asked Yvain. To let people know we were here, Tristram told her. What people? You never know, he told her. Better I should call to people who aren't there than the people who are there should miss us because I didn't say anything. She said nothing in reply to this. I've been thinking, said Tristram. And what I've been thinking is this. After we're done with what I need, got you back to Wall, given you to Victoria Forrester, perhaps we could do what you need. What I need? Well, you want to go back, don't you? Up into the sky, to shine again at night, so we can sort that out. She looked up at him and shook her head. That doesn't happen, she explained. Stars fall, they don't go back up again. You could be the first, he told her. You have to believe, otherwise it will never happen. It will never happen, she told him. No more than your shouting is going to attract anyone up here when there isn't anyone. Doesn't matter if I believe it or not, that's just the way things are. How's your hand? He shrugged. Hurts, he said. How's your leg? Hurts, she said, but not as badly as it did before. Ahoy! Came a voice from far above them. Ahoy down there! Parties in need of assistance? Glinting golden in the sunlight was a small ship, its sails billowing, and a ruddy mustachioed face looked down at them from over the side. Was that you, young fellow me lad, leaping cavorting just now? It was, said Tristram, and I think we are in need of assistance, yes. Right-ho, said the man. Get ready to grab the ladder then. I'm afraid my friend has a broken leg, he called, and I've hurt my hand. I don't think either of us can climb a ladder. Not a problem, we can pull you up. And with that, the man tumbled a long rope ladder over the side of the ship. Tristram caught at it with his good hand, and he held it steady while Yvain pulled herself onto it. Then he climbed on below her. The face vanished from the side of the ship as Tristram and Yvain dangled awkwardly on the end of the rope ladder. The wind caught the sky ship, causing the ladder to pull up from the cloud, and Tristram and Yvain to spin slowly in the air. Now, haul! Shouted several voices in unison, and Tristram felt them being hauled up several feet. Haul! 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 Each shout signalled them being pulled higher. The cloud upon which they had been sitting was now no longer below them. Instead, there was a drop of what Tristram supposed must be a mile or more. He held on tightly to the rope, hooking the elbow of his burned hand about the rope ladder. Another jerk upwards, and Yvain was level with the top of the ship's railing. Someone lifted her with care and placed her upon the deck. Tristram clambered over the railing himself and tumbled down onto the oaken deck. The ruddy-faced man extended a hand. Welcome aboard, he said. This is the free ship Perdita, bound on a lightning hunting expedition. Captain Johannes Alberic at your service. He coughed deep in his chest. And then, before Tristram could say a word in reply, the captain spied Tristram's left hand and called, Megget! Megget! Blast you, where are you? Over here, passengers in need of attention. There, lad, Megget will see to your hand. We eat at 6 bells. You shall sit at my table. Soon a nervous-looking woman with an explosive mop of carrot-red hair, Megget, was escorting him below decks and smearing a thick green ointment onto his hand, which cooled it and eased the pain. And then he was being led into the mess, which was a small dining room next to the kitchen, which he was delighted to discover that they referred to as the galley, just as in the sea stories he had read. Tristram did indeed get to eat at the captain's table, although there was in fact no other table in the mess. In addition to the captain and Megget, there were 5 other members of the crew, a disparate bunch who seemed content to let Captain Alberic do all the talking, which he did, with his ale pot in one hand and the other hand alternately concerned with holding his stubby pipe and conveying food into his mouth. The food was a thick soup of vegetables, beans and barley, and it filled Tristram and contented him. To drink, there was the clearest, coldest water Tristram had ever tasted. The captain asked them no questions about how they came to find themselves high on a cloud, and they volunteered no answers. Tristram was given a berth with Oddness, the first mate, a quiet gentleman with large wings and a bad stammer, while Yvain berthed in Megget's cabin, and Megget herself moved into a hammock. Tristram often found himself looking back on his time in the Perdita during the rest of his journey through Faerie as one of the happiest periods of his time. The crew let him help with the sails and even gave him a turn at the wheel from time to time. Sometimes the ship would sail above dark storm clouds as big as mountains, and the crew would fish for lightning bolts with a small copper chest. The rain and the wind would wash the deck of the ship, and he often would find himself laughing with exhilaration, while the rain ran down his face and gripping the rope railing with his good hand to keep from being tumbled over the side by the storm. Megget, who was a little taller and a little thinner than Yvain, had lent her several gowns, which the star wore with relief, taking pleasure in wearing something new on different days. Often she would climb out to the figurehead, despite her broken leg, and sit looking down at the ground below. "How's your hand?" asked the captain. "A lot better, thank you," said Tristram. The skin was shiny and scarred, and he had little feeling in the fingers, but Megget's salve had taken most of the pain and sped the healing process immeasurably. He had been sitting on deck with his legs dangling over the side, looking out. "We'll be taking anchor in a week to take provisions and little cargo," said the captain. "Might be best if we were to let you off down there." "Oh, thank you," said Tristram. "You'll be closer to Wall. Still a good 10-week journey, though, maybe more. But Megget says she's nearly got your friend's leg up to snuff. It'll be able to take her weight again soon." They sat side by side. The captain puffed on his pipe. His clothes were covered in a fine layer of ash, and when he was not smoking his pipe, he was chewing at the stem or excavating the bowl with a sharp metal instrument or tamping in new tobacco. "You know," said the captain, staring off toward the horizon, "it wasn't entirely fortune that we found you. Well, it was fortune that we found you, but it'd also be true to say that I was keeping half an eye out for you. I and a few others about the place." "Why?" said Tristram. "And how did you know about me?" In reply, the captain traced a shape with his finger in the condensation on the polished wood. "It looks like a castle," said Tristram. The captain winked at him. "Not a word to say too loudly," he said, "even up here. Think of it as a fellowship." Tristram stared at him. "Do you know a little hairy man with a hat and an enormous pack of goods?" The captain tapped his pipe against the side of the boat. A movement of his hand had already erased the picture of a castle. "Aye, and he's not the only member of the fellowship with an interest in your return to Wall. Which reminds me, you should tell the young lady that if she fancies trying to pass for other than what she is, she might try to give the impression that she eats something, anything, from time to time." "I never mentioned Wall in your presence," said Tristram. "When you asked where I came from, I said behind us. And when you asked where we were going, I said ahead of us." "That's my boy," said the captain. "Exactly." Another week passed, on the 5th day of which Megget pronounced Yvain's splint ready to come off. She removed the makeshift bandages and the splint, and Yvain practiced hobbling about the decks from bow to stern, holding onto the rails. Soon she was moving about the ship without difficulty, albeit with a slight limp. On the 6th day there came a mighty storm, and they caught 6 fine lightning bolts in their copper box. On the 7th day they made port. Tristram and Yvain said their goodbyes to the captain and the crew of the free ship Perdita. Megget gave Tristram a small pot of the green salve for his hand and for Yvain to rub onto her leg. The captain gave Tristram a leather shoulder bag filled with dried meats and fruits and fragments of tobacco, a knife and a tinder box. "Oh, it's no bother, lad. We're taking on provisions here anyway." While Megget made Yvain a gift of a blue silk gown, sewn with tiny silver stars and moons, "for it looks so much better on you than it ever has on me, my dear." The ship moored beside a dozen other similar skyships at the top of a huge tree, large enough to support hundreds of dwellings built into the trunk. It was inhabited by people and dwarves, by gnomes and sylvans and other, even queerer folk. There were steps around the trunk, and Tristan and the Star descended them slowly. Tristan was relieved to be back on something attached to solid ground, and yet, in some way he could never have put into words, he felt disappointed, as if when his feet touched the earth once more, he had lost something very fine. It was 3 days of walking before the harbour tree disappeared over the horizon. They travelled west toward the sunset, along a wide and dusty road. They slept beside hedgerows. Tristan ate fruit and nuts from bushes and trees, and he drank from clear streams. They encountered few other people on the road. When they could, they stopped at small farms where Tristan would put in an afternoon's work in exchange for food and some straw in the barn to sleep on. Sometimes they would stop in the towns and villages upon the way to wash and eat, or in the Star's case to feign eating, and to room whenever they could afford it at the town's inn. In the town of Simcock-under-Hill, Tristan and Yvain had an encounter with a goblin press gang that might have ended unhappily, with Tristan spending the rest of his life fighting the goblins' endless wars beneath the earth, had it not been for Yvain's quick thinking and her sharp tongue. In Berenhead's forest, Tristan outfaced one of the great tawny eagles, who would have carried them both back to its nest to feed its young, and was afraid of nothing at all, save fire. In a tavern in Folkestone, Tristan gained great renown by reciting from memory Coleridge's Kubla Khan, the 23rd Psalm, The Quality of Mercy Street from The Merchant of Venice, and a poem about a boy who stood on the burning deck where all but he had fled, each of which he had been obliged to commit to memory in his school days. He blessed Mrs. Cherry for her efforts in making him memorize verse, until it became apparent that the townsfolk of Folkestone had decided that he would stay with them forever and become the next bard of the town. Tristan and Yvain were forced to sneak out of the town at the dead of night, and they only escaped because Yvain persuaded, by some means on which Tristan was never entirely clear, the dogs of the town not to bark as they left. The sun burnt Tristran's face to a nut-brown colour, and faded his clothes to the hues of rust and of dust. Yvain remained as pale as the moon, and she did not lose her limp, no matter how many leagues they covered. One evening, camped at the edge of a deep wood, Tristan heard something he had never heard before. A beautiful melody, plangent and strange. It filled his head with visions, and filled his heart with awe and delight. The music made him think of spaces without limits, of huge crystalline spheres which revolved with unutterable slowness through the vasty halls of the air. The melody transported him, took him beyond himself. After what might have been long hours, and might have been only minutes, it ended, and Tristan sighed. "That was wonderful," he said. The Star's lips moved involuntarily into a smile, and her eyes brightened. "Thank you," she said. "I suppose that I have not felt like singing until now." "I have never heard anything like it." "Some nights," she told him, "my sisters and I would sing together. Sing songs like that one, all about the lady our mother, and the nature of time, and the joys of shining and of loneliness." "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be," she told him. "At least I am still alive. I was lucky to have fallen in fairy. And I think I was probably lucky to have met you." "Thank you," said Tristan. "You're welcome," said the Star. She sighed then in her turn, and stared up at the sky through the gaps in the trees. Tristan was looking for breakfast. He had found some young puffball mushrooms and a plum tree covered with purple plums which had ripened and dried almost to prunes, when he spotted the bird in the undergrowth. He made no attempt to catch it. He had had a severe shock some weeks earlier when, having narrowly failed to capture a large grey-brown hare for his dinner, it had stopped at the edge of the forest, looked at him with disdain and said, "Well, I hope you're proud of yourself, that's all," and then scampered off into the long grass. But he was fascinated by it. It was a remarkable bird, as large as a pheasant, but with feathers of all colours, garish reds and yellows and vivid blues. It looked like a refugee from the tropics, utterly out of place in this green and ferny wood. The bird started in fear as he approached it, hopping awkwardly as he came closer and letting out cries of sharp distress. Tristram dropped to one knee next to it, murmuring reassurances. He reached out to the bird. The difficulty was obvious. A silver chain attached to the bird's foot had become entangled in the twisting stub of a jutting root, and the bird was caught there by it, unable to move. Carefully, Tristram unwound the silver chain, unhooking it from the root, while stroking the bird's ruffled plumage with his left hand. "There you go," he said to the bird. "Go home." But the bird made no move to leave him. Instead, it stared into his face, its head cocked on one side. "Look," said Tristram, feeling rather odd and self-conscious. "Someone will probably be worried about you." He reached down to pick up the bird. Something hit him then, stunning him. Although he had been still, he felt as if he had just run at full tilt and into an invisible wall. He staggered and nearly fell. "Thief!" shouted a cracked old voice. "I shall turn your bones to ice and roast you in front of the fire. I shall pluck your eyes out and tie one to a herring and t'other to a seagull, so the twin sights of sea and sky shall take you into madness. I shall make your tongue into a writhing worm, and your fingers shall become razors, and fire ants shall eat your skin, so each time you scratch yourself—" "There is no need to belabor your point," said Tristram to the old woman. "I did not steal your bird. Its chain was snagged upon a root, and I had just freed it." She glared at him suspiciously from below her mop of iron grey hair. Then she scurried forward and picked up the bird. She held it up and whispered something to it, and it replied with an odd musical chirp. The old woman's eyes narrowed. "Well, perhaps what you say is not a complete pack of lies," she admitted extremely grudgingly. "It's not a pack of lies at all," said Tristram. But the old woman and her bird were already halfway across the glade, so he gathered up his puffballs and his plums, and he walked back to where he had left Yvain. She was sitting beside the path, rubbing her feet. Her hip pained her, and so did her leg, while her feet were becoming more and more sensitive. Sometimes at night, Tristram would hear her sobbing softly to herself. He hoped the moon would send them another unicorn, and knew that she would not. "Well," said Tristram to Yvain, "that was odd." He told her about the events of the morning, and thought that was the end of it. He was, of course, wrong. Several hours later, Tristram and the Star were walking along the forest path when they were passed by a brightly painted caravan, pulled by 2 grey mules and driven by the old woman who had threatened to change his bones to ice. She reined in her mules and crooked a bony finger at Tristram. "Come here, lad," she said. He walked over to her warily. "Yes, ma'am?" "Seems I owe you an apology," she said. "Seems you were telling the truth. Jump to a conclusion." "Yes," said Tristram. "Let me look at you," she said, climbing down into the roadway. Her cold finger touched the soft place beneath Tristram's chin, forcing his head up. His hazel eyes stared into her old green eyes. "You look honest enough," she said. "You can call me Madame Semele. I'm on my way to Wall for the market. I was thinking that I'd welcome a boy to work my little flower stall. I sells glass flowers, you know, the prettiest things that ever you did see. You'd be a fine market lad, and we could put a glove over that hand of yours so you'd not scare the customers. What do you say?" Tristram pondered and said, "Excuse me," and went over and conferred with Yvain. Together they walked back to the old woman. "Good afternoon," said the Star. "We have discussed your offer, and we thought that—" "Well?" asked Mistress Semele, her eyes fixed upon Tristram. "Don't just stand there like a dumb thing. Speak, speak, speak." "I have no desire to work for you at the market," said Tristram, "for I have business of my own that I shall need to deal with there. However, if we could ride with you, my companion and I are willing to pay for our passage." Madame Semele shook her head. That's of no use to me. I can gather my own firewood, and you'd just be another weight for Faithless and Hopeless to pull. I take no passengers. She climbed back up into the driver's seat. But, said Tristram, I would pay you. The harridan cackled with scorn. There's never a thing you could possess that I would take for your passage. Now, if you'll not work for me at the market wall, then be off with you. Tristram reached up to the buttonhole of his jerkin and felt it there, as cold and perfect as it had been through all his journeyings. He pulled it out and held it up to the old woman between finger and thumb. You sell glass flowers, you say, he said. Would you be interested in this one? It was a snowdrop made of green glass and white glass, cunningly fashioned. It seemed as if it had been plucked from the meadow grass that very morning, and the dew was still upon it. The old woman squinted at it for a heartbeat, looking at its green leaves and its tight white petals. Then she let out a screech. It might have been the anguished cry of some bereft bird of prey. Where did you get that? She cried. Give it to me! Give it to me this instant! Tristram closed his finger about the snowdrop, concealing it from view, and he took a couple of steps backwards. He said aloud. It occurs to me now that I have a deep fondness from this flower, which was a gift from my father when I commenced my travels, and which, I suspect, carries with it a tremendous personal and familial importance. Certainly it has brought me luck of one kind or another. Perhaps I would be better off keeping the flower, and my companion and I can walk to war. Madame Semele seemed torn between her desire to threaten and to cajole, and the emotions chased each other so nakedly across her face that she seemed almost to vibrate with the effort of keeping them in check. Then she took herself in hand and said, in a voice that cracked with self-control, Now, no need to be hasty. I am certain that a deal can be struck between us. Oh, said Tristram, I doubt it. It would need to be a very fine deal to interest me, and it would need certain guarantees of safe conduct, and such safeguards as to assure that your behaviour and actions towards me and my companion remain at all times benign. Let me see the snowdrop again, pleaded the old woman. The bright-coloured bird, its silver chain about one leg, fluttered out of the open door of the caravan and gazed down at the proceedings beneath. The poor thing, said Yvain, chained up like that. Why do you not set her free? But the old woman did not answer her, ignoring her, or so Tristram thought, and said, I will transport you to Wall, and I swear upon my honour and upon my true name that I will take no action to harm you upon the journey. Or by inaction or indirect action, allow harm to come to me or my companion? As you say. Tristram thought for a moment. He certainly did not trust the old woman. I wish you to swear that we shall arrive in Wall in the same manner and condition and state that we are in now, and that you will give us board and lodging upon the way. The old woman clucked, then nodded. She clambered down from the caravan once more, and hawked, then spat into the dust. She pointed to the glob of spittle. Now you, she said. Tristram spat next to it. With her foot she rubbed both wet patches so they conjoined. There, she said. A bargain's a bargain. Give me the flower. The greed and hunger were so obvious in her face that Tristram was now certain he could have made a better deal, but he gave the old woman his father's flower. As she took it from him, her face broke into a gap-toothed grin. Why, I do think that this is the superior of the one that damnable child gave away almost 20 years ago. Now, tell me, young man, she asked, looking up at Tristram with her sharp old eyes, do you know what manner of thing you have been wearing in your buttonhole? It is a flower, a glass flower. The old woman laughed so hard and so suddenly that Tristram thought she was choking. It is a frozen charm, she said, a thing of power. Something like this can perform wonders and miracles in the right hands. Watch. She held the snowdrop above her head, then brought it slowly down so it brushed Tristram's forehead. For but a heartbeat, he felt most peculiar. as if thick black treacle were running through his veins in place of blood. Then the shape of the world changed. Everything became huge and towering. It seemed as if the old woman herself was now a giantess, and his vision was blurred and confused. 2 huge hands came down and picked him up gently. "Take the biggest of caravans," said Madame Semele, her voice a low, slow, liquid boom, "and I shall keep to the letter of my oath, for you shall not be harmed, and you shall be boarded and lodged on your journey to Wall." And then she dropped the dormouse into the pocket of her apron, and she clambered onto the caravan. "And what do you propose to do to me?" asked Yvain, but she was not entirely surprised when the woman did not reply. She followed the old woman into the dark interior of the caravan. There was but one room. Along one wall was a large showcase made of leather and pine, with 100 pigeonholes in it, and it was in one of these pigeonholes, in a bed of soft thistledown, that the old woman placed the snowdrop. Along the other wall was a small bed, with a window above it and a large cupboard. Madame Semele bent down and pulled a wooden cage from the cluttered space beneath her bed, and she took the blinking dormouse from her pocket and placed it into the cage. Then she took a handful of nuts and berries and seeds from a wooden bowl and placed them inside the cage, which she hung from a chain in the middle of the caravan. "There we go," she said, "board and lodging." Yvain had watched all of this with curiosity from her seat on the old woman's bed. "Would I be correct," she asked politely, "in concluding from the evidence to hand, to wit, that you have not looked at me, or if you have, your eyes have slipped over me, that you have not spoken a word to me, and that you have changed my companion into a small animal with no such provision for myself, that you can neither see me nor hear me?" The witch made no reply. She walked up to the driver's seat, sat down and took up the reins. The exotic bird hopped up beside her and it chirruped once, curiously. "Of course I have kept my word, to the letter," said the old woman, as if in reply. "He shall be transformed back at the market meadow, so shall regain his own form before he comes to war. And after I have turned him back, I shall make you human again, for I have still to find a better servant than you are, silly slut. I could not have been doing with him underfoot all the livelong day, poking and prying and asking questions, and I'd have had to feed him into the bargain more than nuts and seeds." She hugged herself tightly and swayed back and forth. "Oh, you'll have to get up pretty early in the morning to put one past me. And I do believe that bumpkin's flower was even finer than one you lost to me all those years ago." She clicked her tongue and shook the reins, and the mules began to amble down the forest track. While the witch drove, Yvain rested upon her musty bed. The caravan clacked and lurched its way through the forest. When it stopped, she would awake and rise. While the witch slept, Yvain would sit on the roof of the caravan and look up at the stars. Sometimes the witch's bird would sit with her, and then she would pet it and make a fuss of it, for it was good to have something about that acknowledged her existence. But when the witch was about, the bird ignored her utterly. Yvain also cared for the dormouse, who spent most of the time fast asleep, curled up with his head between his paws. When the witch was off gathering firewood or fetching water, Yvain would open up his cage and stroke him and talk to him, and on several occasions she sang to him, although she could not tell whether anything of Tristram remained in the dormouse, who stared up at her with placid, sleepy eyes like droplets of black ink, and whose fur was softer than down. Her hip did not pain her now that she was not walking every day, and her feet did not hurt her so much. She would always limp, she knew, for Tristram was no surgeon when it came to mending a broken bone, although he had done the best he could. Megget had acknowledged as much. When, as happened infrequently, they encountered other people, the star did her best to stay out of sight. However, she soon learned that even should someone talk to her within the witch's hearing, should someone, as once a woodcutter did, point to her and ask Madame Semele about her, the witch never seemed able to perceive Yvain's presence or even to hear anything pertaining to her existence. And so the weeks passed in a rattling, bone-jarring sort of way in the witch's caravan for the witch and the bird and the dormouse and the fallen star.
Oh, that was a range of different moods.
Right?
So good.
It started off very grisly. I'm glad it changed direction.
Definitely.
Didn't stay there the whole time.
Yeah. Gross.
That's been a bit much.
Proper gross.
I feel though like Neil Gaiman likes to throw a bit of proper grisly into his fairy tales in a sort of Grimm Brothers sort of way.
So why can't this witch see her and all the other witches were chasing her? I don't get that.
Because
So-
the spell on her. When
So
she-
there you go.
When there was the other witch who Madame Semele met when she was off with her two goats, who told her about the star that she was searching for, and then was furious that she tricked her into telling her about it. So she made it so that Semele couldn't see her here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
There may have been some vocal inconsistency. I didn't go back to check what the voice had been like for her before, so that there may have been a little more confusing than necessary.
I feel there was loads of callbacks in this one to like the castle thing, the Fellowship of the Castle, where the little strange man, he's at a previous point, he's going, I could castle, but
Yeah.
there's no way to decide what, they're not going to be in a better position. And then like when Tristan meets his mother, and it's like, oh, I love it. And how she's getting on with the star, and it's just great. Oh.
I'm going to switch over to the other laptop. One moment.
What's the
Is that why
theory
there's
behind
two
the two
Frankies?
laptops?
Me?
I was wondering why there's two Frankies.
It's because I record now that I'm recording rather than Zach. I use the laptop to record and then like speak to the phone because the quality is better. Like quality is better on the phone, but you can't actually record onto a phone. You have to only record onto a laptop. I'm very unnecessarily involved.
Just if you're on a laptop, you
I
get
like
to
that
see
that
everyone's
amount of
faces.
care has gone into it.
What was that, Sean?
It's nice to know that like some real care has gone into the technology here.
It's all very carefully set up and piled haphazardly on cushions with lots of kind of trailing wires and things.
But from here it looks so zen.
Oh well, thank you. That's all an illusion.
Master of illusion.
Never show us behind the curtain. Speaking of things that are masterful,
Purred at me. I had a cat came in and sat on me and purred for about 20 minutes.
Oh,
Very nice.
that's so lovely. How wholesome.
But
I saw you with a cat and I was very jealous.
black. But she clearly.
Sorry, this is really weird, isn't it?
No. None of us care. Or at least I can only speak for myself, but like, I don't know. I feel like
just absent-mindedly, because there's no bathroom in the shack, so like, I'm in bed, I brush my teeth, I go outside and spit. It's all very civilized.
like,
some mun.
it's like camping, but more glampy.
Exactly.
That sounds kind of nice.
So really glad. We like. Hold on. Let me stop this recording.